There's no race quite like the New York City Marathon, and every year with the time zone falling back in the US, yes, I do remember daylight savings ends right before this event every year. The New York City Marathon provides a great spectacle in a way that we don't honestly see in a lot of other major marathon races with a ton of attention on them these days. And I mean that because the New York City Marathon is a race where time doesn't matter quite as much as racing. Essentially, no one is going to set a world record at New York City Marathon. The course is hilly and challenging, unlike a lot of pancake flat courses like Berlin, Chicago, and Valencia. And that's also what gives New York its character. It's more about racing to race, and we saw some great examples of that today. As the last World Marathon major on the calendar, New York City often gets great fields, and this year was no different. A bit like Boston, the women start the race before the men, and New York is a race characterized by how it goes through all five of its boroughs with a start at Verrazano Bridge in Staten Island. And if you've never been to the Verrazano, it's quite a big bridge and it's quite a hill that the runners start up.
The first mile climbs to the highest point of the course, getting to around 250 feet or 75 meters of elevation, so be sure not to go out too fast.
So it's not uncommon to see some very slow first mile splits, and they didn't really ratchet up the pace too much as they descended into Brooklyn, hitting halfway in just under 1:14. Conditions in New York for the 2024 edition of this race were pretty perfect for fast running, but the women seemed content for a slower first half. Now, obviously, different courses, different times, but when you compare this to, say, Ruth Chepngetich hitting the halfway mark at Chicago in 1:04, almost 10 minutes faster and faster than what the men split in this New York City race, you really do realize how fast that world record was. Anyhow, there were still plenty of women left in this race, and that's honestly what's fun about racing to race. Oftentimes in course or world record attempts, most of the field drops back and it's focused on just a few athletes as the rest of the field isn't really seen throughout the race. But this year, plenty of elites were on screen. One that definitely stood out was this taller Swiss athlete, Schlumpf. I hope I pronounced that correctly. A bit of a surprise to be up there with the lead pack, even as it dwindled down, dropping the likes of Tirunesh Dababa, an all-time great, as well as others. You also had the likes of Sarah Vaughan running a great race as she even took the lead, but eventually the pace would continue to drop from the 540s to the 510s, and this negative split strategy would dwindle the race down to three in Chip Garui, the Adidas athlete, Obiri, sponsored by On, and Chariot with the Puma kit. Chariot would be unable to hang on to the other two Kenyans as they continued to push the pace even further, hitting near 5 flat pace as they took on the hills of Central Park. That would provide an iconic finish to this course. While Obiri, who has a pretty distinct form, knew this part of the course well, Chip Garui would look very strong and was pushing the On Athletics athletes. And it would be Chip Garui as she opened up a gap and made a decisive move for the finish, winning NYC in what was her first time racing the course.
And here she is, coming over the ridge. Put your hands together.
Honestly, Chip Garui looked really smooth closing this one out. Great form and never breaking down even in the challenging final few miles through Central Park. Shifting to the men's race, things would play out in a somewhat similar fashion as the group didn't go after a super fast time, staying more in the 5 flat to high 450 range through the first half of the race. There were plenty of contenders still in it, including American talent in the likes of Young, Mance, Laura, and of course, CJ Albertson. Now, CJ is one of those runners that's always fun to watch because the dude isn't afraid to take the lead and just hammer. And he made a solid move to separate himself from the pack in the middle of this one. However, this group chasing had some huge talent from East Africa in it, including Tamarat Tola, the Ethiopian that won the Olympic marathon in Paris, and he would start taking command of this race, not only swallowing up any moves, but also beginning to break the pack up. As the group crossed into the Upper East Side to head into the Bronx, Tola would be pushing a pack including notable Kenyans Geoffrey Kamworor and Evans Chebet, on paper the big contenders, with Tola just after the woman finished. The men would be heading for Central Park, and Chebet would lead a move to gap both Kamworor and, quite shockingly, defending champ and world champ Tamirat Tola. With those two dropped, it would be Abdi Nagi who would be able to hang with the pace that started going right around and under 440 per mile. Much like the women's race with the negative split attrition, this will be a duel between two runners through the Central Park Hills. And I gotta say, with the timing of fall foliage this year, this course was just absolutely beautiful in the final portion of this race. Central Park is such a great place in New York and a great place to end a marathon. Comparing the two, it definitely looked like Chebet was not quite as relaxed going down the stretch here, rocking and rolling a bit. But in fact, he would be the one making the surge. However, Nagi, calm and poised and having conserved energy for a lot of this race, had it within him to hang with the moves and eventually go past Chebet, winning the New York City Marathon in 2:07:39, a very solid time after a slower first half. And for Abdi Nagi, it's been a long time coming, as the Dutch runner from Somalia, Olympic medalist and third at New York 2 years ago, got his first World Marathon Major crown, defeating in the process multiple-time World Marathon Major champion Evans Chebet. After a lot of consistently strong results, Abdi Nagi had finally achieved the big win, and in a race that featured a lot of other contenders, which was pretty great to see. Now, it was fun to watch a marathon that wasn't purely a time trial event or something like that, but rather a race where a lot of people were in it throughout, and there was some excitement as you really didn't know what would or could happen. Overall, the Americans had some decent results in this one. Man snapped sixth place ahead of Clayton Young with a 2:09 flag, clocking a very solid result. On the women's side, Sarah Vaughan, who actually led in mile 18 of this race, came in sixth as top American with a 2:26:56 clocking, and I think she's someone that's often overlooked and deserves a lot of praise for what she does. Again, there really is no race quite like the New York City Marathon. It's not the fastest course in the world, but it's a unique one, and the atmosphere really makes it such a great event every year, as it happens in the first few hours after daylight savings. And if you enjoy coverage of the sport like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. See you in the next